to you. Okay, so if you start with your name.
Hey, my name is Maxwell, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on the history of auto-tune and pitch correction. Okay, well, the first thing we really need to ask ourselves is what exactly is pitch correction? It's quite an obvious thing. Most people would think they know what it is, but they don't really understand what really goes into getting this sort of stuff to work. So I'm going to explain this. Basically, with pitch correction software and hardware, what goes into it is called a pitch detection algorithm. And basically what would happen during it is that the pitch detection algorithm would pick up the frequency of your current signal, and it would then modulate it up or down according to basically the nearest frequency you're looking for, or it will roughly make a guesstimate or best estimate of what you're trying to go for. Either cut up or down, boost up or down. Okay, basically a lot of people knew auto-tune existed, but it wasn't as obvious as people might have thought until recently. It was always going on, but it wasn't made that public. But I don't know if any of you have seen this, but back in 2010, the X Factor, what happened, it was really strange for them to do, but what happened is they actually they added post-production onto the contestants' voices. They would actually auto-tune them afterwards, which is really odd. It was basically I read in an article about it, is that they had so much bleed from other mics that they couldn't really understand it, so they're trying to reconstruct the sound by tuning it, which I think is a bit nonsense. But I've got a short video of the news report on it, and there's also a short demonstration of it in action.
Why at all? Well, they say they want the televised end product to be the most entertaining experience possible. Critics say altering the singers' voices takes away the show's integrity. But we decided to find out for ourselves just how much difference the voice tuning software actually makes.
That's really quite obvious.
Dinner recorded 11 million viewers on Saturday night, but the X Factor was in the news for different reasons today, after being accused of using computer software to improve the contestants' voices. Zimbabwean Gami Nengu was one of those whose voice sounded noticeably better post-production, leading fans to believe technical wizardry had been involved. There was only one way to find out what the fuss was all about. We went down to Covent Garden's recording studio, The Hospital, to put auto-tune into practice.
Is this a controlling job?
Incredible. I mean,
It's not what happens.
do you know what all those do?
Most of them. It's taken me a while, but yes, I do.
Auto-tune is a software device which allows singers to have their pitch perfectly tuned.
We can do a semitone, we can do more, we can do in between.
Whole tone?
We could do a whole tone.
God, you see, it could be really seriously bad, and you could get me into kind of condition.
You do need to have an element of the original vocal being within the boundaries of auto-tune.
Is it worth watching him sing? Or?
Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Remember to let her into your heart when you can start to make it better. Well, Simon, I'll give you my
I personally don't think what he did
Give me what I actually did.
When he auto-tuned the vocals, I don't really think it made too much of a difference.
Don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Okay, what you've done to it.
Okay, with the auto-tune it again. Okay.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Definitely. Remember to let her into your heart.
You actually notice on the auto-tune version, if you kind of listen to the end of the notes, if you heard it on suspended notes, there's a bit of vibrato going on, which is actually all the auto-tune, because that's what people would used to do. If there's too much of a fluctuation, they just boost it like highs and lows by about half a semitone, just a bit of vibrato. So there you go. Now I'm going to talk about the earliest uses and the hardware approaches of pitch correction. Okay, basically this dates back to the 1950s, and what people would do, well, I'll better explain. They would only, I personally think they'd only use auto-tune, well, pitch correction, because of tape. When they record tape, there sometimes would be fluctuations and bad recording. They would use it to fix that up. So basically, in the 50s, people would hook up an amplifier driven by an oscillator to the capstan of an analog tape machine, so it would be controlling the speed, basically. Because in tape, if you slow down the tape, it would change the pitch. So, yeah, they would pitch it and then they'd make a copy of the pitch shifted part and then they'd splice it back into the original track. In the 70s, they introduced hardware called the eventide harmonizer, which is basically like a time-based shifting, which is basically, it's like a more modern version of what tape splice would do, more modern tape speed shifting. But the main difference is they didn't use it very much back in then, because back in the 50s, 60s, people still had more talent than they've got today. I'm now going to show you some of the significant occurrences of it in mainstream music. Starting with Share, Believe. Basically, if you've heard this track, you know in the verse it's got a bit of tuning going on. And this is the first instance of it being quite used as an effect, because otherwise it would have just been used slightly to pitch shift people's voices into perfect tuning, perfect pitch. But they used it as an effect here. I'll just show it here. Basically, with this, the story behind it, or so I'm told, is that Cher didn't know this was going to happen, so the producers just added it on as an effect because they thought it might be quite a nice idea to try it. So they did that, and they did think that Cher would be a bit reluctant to use it. But when they showed it to her, she thought it was a really good idea. She really liked the sound of it. But then when they sent it off to the label, apparently the label really didn't like it, and they told her to get rid of it, and she was just really stubborn and really reluctant to do so. So it's now on there. And I'm now going to use some other examples of it. But this is where it's going to be, this isn't more of an example where you can manipulate it, not just use it in effect just to clean people up. It's just how it can be manipulated to work with word settings and mood settings. That was basically word setting movement. It was just because the previous line about insanity, that's going insane, that works quite well. Another example is the Al City song from 2010, Fireflies, which I personally can't stand the song, and I'm really sorry that you're going to have to be put through it. But it's difficult to think whether he's using it as an effect or just using it to clean up his voice, because it's really, really obvious. And he sings with it live, which is really odd. But what you judge yourself. But that's really obvious. I mean, when people tune their voices with software like this, it adds a certain tone to it. It's quite computerized and awful. But then my last example, I'm pretty sure you've all heard it. Friday. One of my favourite songs. Loves. There we go. And now I've used auto-tune in the past for my EP that I did recently, but the thing is I didn't have to use very much because I had a really talented vocalist, Mr. Joblink over here. But I used it because in the song there's a two-part harmony, and in the harmony one of the notes stays the same the entire time, so it's a lot easier just to tune one, so it's kind of like a solid foundation for the other harmony to work. So you can have a listen to this and see. Basically, if you listen to that, the higher harmony, it sounds really, it's really solid, which is what I really wanted. Other uses. People tend to think that autotune is just used for vocals, and this is not true. In a lot of music, a lot of the foundation is bass. I mean, metal, for example. If you don't have a very strong bass line, everything's going to fall apart, basically. It's that absolute bass. But the things with guitars is they're really useless, pretty much, for tuning because they're always out by a bit. It's like intonation is a really hard part to fix, and if you don't get it right, you can mess everything. So if you tune the bass, what a lot of people tend to do, Andy Sneap, producer, tends to do that, and sometimes I think, well, I think it does. So by tuning the bass, you are ensuring a very strong low end. We need to talk about its place in the modern day music industry. Basically, it's very difficult to not find a track from the Cher song, which is 1998, that hasn't been pitch corrected at all, because it's just the studio standard. We've built ourselves this image of perfection, and we've kind of got to stick to it, basically. So it's rarely not used. Yeah. It's difficult to think who the decision is made by to use autotune. Is it the producer? Is it the label? Is it the artist? We don't know. I tend to think it's all in the site, isn't it? All in the mixer's hands. So I tend to think it's the mixer's hands. And now we've got to pretty much think about the emotion versus performance factor. What is more important? Is it doing the emotion or the performance? Basically, the emotion, how you portray certain feelings, anger, sadness, whatever. The performance is how. It's basically, is it more important to have a performance that's got emotion or a performance that's pitch perfect? That's what I'm trying to say. Here's my last slide, but my last slide was basically the future of autotune. What do we think is going to happen in the future? Is it going to continue? I personally don't think it can get any bigger than it already is. But I guess we just have to wait and see. There we go.